For today's video, I prepared something a bit different. That is, I tried to simulate an actual Amazon loop with some of the more interesting questions, some follow-up questions, some good and some not so good examples, and I'll be sure to add some notes throughout the videos to guide you through the process. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. So Dan, why do you want to work for Amazon? Well, I want to work at Amazon for 3 reasons. The first reason is that Amazon is in a very unique position that opens up endless opportunities that is at the intersection of speed, that is through your digital presence, and reach through your scale. And this basically means that any product market strategy has actually a good chance of succeeding. The second reason why I want to join Amazon is because of my unique combination of product development and the sales acumen. Throughout the past decade, I led multiple teams of multicultural people and launched quite successfully some HR products, as I'm sure that John, my internal referral, told you. And the third reason why I want to join Amazon is because 5 years from now, I want to be impacting not millions but billions of people, and I believe that Amazon is in a pretty unique position to allow me to advance my career goals. Can you think of a time when you actually failed to deliver something significant on time, and how did you go about that? Can you explain to me the sequence of events? Sure. One of my clients are in the art gallery business, and they basically rent space to artists willing to exhibit there, and I help them with their digital needs. And I remember one such instance at the end of a year, which is quite a busy time for art galleries. There was one artist that they was maybe a bit late to provide me with their documentation that I was supposed to publish online, but also mainly because my availability during that around the New Year's Eve was not the best. I actually had the domino effect of delays into publishing the information on the website, actually sending the newsletters to our subscribers, and preparing the list for the next year. And basically, they had to go with the exhibition, with the main event of the exhibition, without us actually sending that email invitation, or without us even publishing that on the website, which is pretty embarrassing, I must admit. However, their actual exhibition went well because, you see, the goal of the exhibition was not, I mean, the type of exhibition was not primarily dependent on our digital communication, so that was, more like an added asset. However, ever since we've certainly learned our lessons to at first ensure that we would ask for these materials well in advance, and I've also set up different calendars with reminders and with proper deadlines to ensure that these things won't happen again. And ever since, I'm doing business with these people for a number of years now, for more than 7 years, and business is running smoothly, and they actually just opened their second art gallery. All right, so while I do understand, this was a genuinely challenging situation, there wasn't a lot of stake here, and this wasn't such a corporate environment. So this certainly looks like more of like a side project. So would you maybe have another example from within a corporate context where you struggled where you had a significant challenge of delivering something significant, and to explain why that's what's something significant, and how you actually went about delivering that specific product or service in time? Sure, I can certainly think of an example when I was leading the development of an HR software together with a business partner, which basically at some point in time we were we noticed the new trend that of integrating various job boards into our HR software. So we enable our clients to post job ads throughout the internet wherever it was more relevant for them. And you see, we had an initial target of integrating 20 such job boards. So, however, we took a rather incremental approach. We integrated the 5 most common of them, and what happened here is that as soon after we integrated this, we noticed 2 clear winners, 2 clear job boards that everyone wanted to use. So we actually had to shift our strategy here to see deeper integrations with these job boards, because we were, as you'd expect, we were just testing the waters here, so we were just making surface level integration. So we had to enter with provide more deeper integrations here, with the risk, of course, of delaying everything else. And this was actually a major challenge for us, for both a technical reason, because managing this amount of source code with rather limited resources was quite challenging. So I had to set up multiple meetings with my technical lead to understand the risk and to prevent us from delivering low quality software here. On the other hand, I also kept an open communication with my business partner, who's actually doing the sales for this HR software, to ensure that we deliver the best quality also in the best timeline possible. So if for example our initial estimate would be that we'd integrate those 20 job boards within 2 or 3 months, we've integrated the first 5 in 2 weeks, and we decided it was a great success. So we set ourselves a goal of properly integrating those 2 main job boards in another 2 weeks time. So we actually went above and beyond to properly ensure that we deliver that integration, and it turned out to be a major success for us, because the number of ads posted to our software actually tripled in that period of time, and we've also achieved a platinum status with those 2 main job boards. So it was actually turned out to be a very profitable business, into which there was a serious challenge, a serious time challenge, because everyone wanted a piece of those marketplaces. So we finally integrated, and not only that, but we ended up also integrating the other job boards, but only later on. So we properly I would say we made the right call here in terms of prioritization. All right, and how many clients did you have in the software? So we had around 200 hiring managers from around 50 small to mid-sized business in the service industry, US-based overall. So this is to give you an idea on the size or on the scale of the system. Mm-hmm. I see. And were you the main driver of this project? What was your role in this project? Were you directly responsible of actually delivering that integration sooner rather than later? Yes, I was actually in charge of prototyping and delivering pretty much all the features in the software. So I led the team of developers, and I was collaborating with my business partner who worked in sales primarily. Can you talk to me about the time when you failed? Sure, probably an interesting story here would be to talk about the beginnings of my YouTube channel, where in the beginning, despite the fact that I would invest hundreds, 200 hours even to produce one video, basically no one would watch it. There were only a dozen people who would. And this went actually on for around 1 year, when I would often invest months into one series that would fail to gain any traction, and which basically made me to discontinue I think 2 or 3 of the series. So needless to say, this was actually a pretty painful failure. However, this helped me a lot to learn the importance of storytelling, and not only that, but creating HR content people actually want to consume. And once I got this right, things started to eventually head in the right direction. And right now, despite the fact that I'm still investing a lot of time and I'm still doing things pretty much by myself here, I'm having thousands of people watching these videos every day, and also thousands of people subscribing to my YouTube channel, and provide me with very useful feedback to actually grow this channel. All right, but this one is actually pretty light. Do you have another one, maybe in a team context, where you actually failed on something more significant that you could ideally also better quantify in terms of impact? All right. Well, you see, let me tell you the story of an HR B2B software that I co-founded with the business partner, and which I actually referenced in the ads example previously. You see, despite the fact that we actually invested around 5 years of our time into that effort and around $2 million, it actually failed to gain any traction. I mean, not any traction, but it failed to gain proper traction to say it was something that's worthwhile continuing. And basically, I assume my fair share of the failure. But I would say the main learning from that experience is that I could have done a much better job in failing better or having a much faster failure or success cycle in delivering various parts of the software, because we'd often end up spending 1 year to develop a feature that just in order to find out whether that's going to work or not. And the second big learning from this pretty significant failure, I hope this is clear now, that is that I could have definitely better communicated with my business partner to maybe have the correct expectations over this, how this project evolved over time, and this actually served as a very constructive learning experience, and it's helping me pretty much every day in today's initiatives. And what was the goal of this software? The initial goal of the software was to attract small to medium-sized services business on the US market, to basically assist them with their hiring needs, but also the employee development needs. So basically, we'll try to advance structured hiring and employee profiling tools, personality profiling tools within a digital context. And can you talk to me about some of the greatest challenges that you faced in delivering such a software? Why wasn't it successful? Some of the biggest challenges here were we were actually running on a limited amount of resources we had to deliver. We had basically 2 developers and 1 tester and maybe 1 technical lead, which we'd have to deliver enterprise-grade software, and oftentimes we'd have to customize that software to our customer requests, which is pretty challenging to also maintain a software, to give a certain direction to that software, and to keep customizations to keep our clients happy and to keep people engaged into using the system. And what was your contribution to this? What type of, I mean, I'm trying to understand whether you were a differentiator in this project. Did you bring any unique value for this, or you were just, basically managing developers and ensuring the communication would run smoothly between sales and your development team? I would say my biggest contribution was in 2 parts. The first is that I came up with a team of developers, which were actually, I worked with those people for a number of years previously. And the second contribution I would say here was more on the structured hiring side, where I was trying to structure as good as possible that process and even go as far as to score candidates and to differentiate between candidates at various stages of the hiring process in a digital and pretty much automated context. Yes, and by the way, if you were to implement this at Amazon, how would you do it? Yeah, well, probably I would begin by ensuring that the candidate funnel is steady. In other words, I would do whatever I can to increase the number of candidates flowing into the system, because I know one of the main success factors of such applications is scale. And then I probably take a look at what types of existing systems are you using, and try to come up with basically a more standardized or a more optimized template at each step of the process. And why not maybe even open source the types of questions that you would ask during interviews, because I believe this could also play as an accelerator of overall the hiring process. I see, but I'm having a hard time to understand the added value of a digital process. For example, we could just use email. It's also digital and it works pretty fast. We have pretty advanced emailing systems. So why would you add a structured hiring process? What type of value would this bring to the table? I believe the main advantage here would be your ability to quantify information, and basically when you can measure things, you have a lot better understanding on how you can where to move next. Now, I'm not trying to suggest a fully automated system to run the overall hiring process, but as soon as you have some indicators, some performance KPIs on how the hiring goes, I believe it's much more straightforward to use that in the decision-making process, even if the decision-making process is based on gut feeling ultimately. But a digital context has proved its benefits because of the fact that it can accelerate in a very conscious manner and in a very precise manner the hiring of quality people. Could you talk to me about your strengths? Sure. So I believe one of my core strengths is persuasiveness, and probably the best story to emphasize this would be the story of my YouTube channel, where in fact for 1 year I had a very limited amount of success, but then as time went by, I noticed I was actually sure that there is something interesting going on here. So I would say that I was persuasive enough to follow my dreams, actually, to deliver quality HR content, and I believe that also. One of my strengths nowadays is to move fast. That is, in YouTube terms, to be able to publish content relatively often with a good amount of quality. All right, what about your weakness? Yeah, one of my weaknesses is that I tend to be at times too direct, and I could certainly exemplify this from the time that I was managing teams of developers, where in one such instance I just a new tech lead was just appointed, and while she was technically great, because of the fact that they were working remotely for me, I felt like the communication wasn't the best between us. So I decided to, given the fact that communication is everything for me, especially in such a setup, I decided to set up a one-on-one with her to discuss what was going on. And during our one-on-one meeting, I asked her various questions about these things, to see how she looks at this situation from their perspective. And I still felt like I wasn't very clear on the importance of over communication during such projects. So I went into some hypothetical situations. I tried to do some role play with her, and because of the fact that the conversation wasn't evolving in a very positive way, she actually started to cry at some point. And I actually felt very bad about myself, because I was really pushing things too hard in that specific situation, and I didn't take into account also the obvious cultural differences that were going on. But ever since I needless to say, I tried to employ a more diplomatic approach, and also to learn one thing or two about the culture, the differences in culture and in perspectives that other people have. And by the way, she actually ended up working with me for the next 6 years or so. So I would say it wasn't. I managed to rectify my failure quite nicely in that context. All right. Do you have other weaknesses? Well, yeah, certainly. I think I could speak about my weakness. Applying for this technical role, I would say that my background, my technical experience makes me quite a good fit for this position. However, throughout my career, I did not work in front-facing sales roles, so I did not have the opportunity to sell actual software or any other products to external customers. However, I would like to point out that I very much enjoy pitching various ideas, and I do this pretty much on a daily basis. So I still believe that pitching new ideas is a core strength of mine. However, sales is something that I generally don't have much experience in. Could you talk to me about the most innovative idea that you've ever pitched? Sure. I could certainly talk about one feature that I pitched in the HR software that we're developing for the services industry in the US, where early on in the software I noticed that our clients weren't too organized with their hiring needs, and they would often spend a lot of time searching for various CVs or for various other personality profile reports in the software. So I thought, what if we'd implement a structured hiring approach that would basically be in one screen and would allow ease of access to information. And I was basically thinking here to try to have a longer-term customer impact, because you see, when you're doing a limited amount of hiring, when you're hiring only for one role, it's very easy to find information. When you do passive hiring and that sort of approach, it can be quite challenging to find candidates and to find information related to candidates. So this is what I believe this was an option. And I looked at various other alternatives, such as storing files and more passive approaches to run these things. But I finally ended up being as convinced that structured hiring was the best way to go. And I pitched this idea to my business partner, and it actually took us 1 year or so to implement a proper system, which was eventually used by upwards of 200 hiring managers. Well, 1 year to implement such a feature and to only have 200 hiring managers, that's not a lot. So why didn't this grow faster? What were the main challenges here? Well, this was primarily challenging because the initial focus of the software was to basically provide personality profiling tools in a digital context, and it took us a while to admit that this wasn't actually going anywhere. So, of course, we had resource constraints. We were limited in the number of resources, but I would say the primary challenge here was the direction in the software was not the best from the first try. All right, and how did you ensure the right outcome of this situation? Yeah, well, I would say I was quite slow to spot this trend, or at least I wasn't very good at convincing my business partner of this, because it took us around I believe 2 years to move away from that initial focus towards more structured hiring and to various other more successful features. But the way I went about ensuring that the right outcome of this whole story was to actually gather data to basically prove my point that no one was properly using those personality profiling tools. And even more interestingly, the personality profiling tools were actually representing an obstacle in the hiring process. So I gathered all the data and tried to and did my point actually with my business partner, and this is how I basically went about ensuring the right outcome of this situation. I see, but I'm having a hard time to understand why digitization was. Why this structured hiring process in a digital context made a difference here. I mean, couldn't they just use email and all their stuff they were currently using? Well, yeah. So it's a fair question, and there are three elements here. By centralizing it is much faster to access that information, and I could prove this to you because I've seen in the software the difference between a non-structured hiring process and a structured one, and I could measure the time it took to access information. In this, the second reason here would be that many of these companies were growing fast, and they had to be hiring by committee. And when you have a hiring process managed by multiple people, you can only imagine that if they don't have the information accessible at the same time and some common place to access that information, it will make it very, very complex for them to do their hiring. And the third point here, why this would make a difference, is that you did actually have the opportunity to spot interesting trends, interesting patterns in what made great hires through these structured hiring and highly digitized hiring processes. So this actually was an innovation, was providing innovation as a process, if I may call it. So given a sufficient amount of hiring was done through the software. And when was this? So this happened around 7 years or so.
I see.
Ago. Do you maybe have a more recent example? I mean, probably to rephrase my question, what was the most innovative idea that you had more recently, within the past year or so? Sure. So I could probably talk about my YouTube channel, where I would say it was around 1 year ago that I hit that right balance between sufficiently interesting content and sufficiently good storytelling in order to make my audience be interested in the content I produce. And why is this an innovation? Well, because there aren't many people doing this nowadays, especially for presumably super boring domain, that of human resources. So I generally believe this is innovation, because if you manage to create content, that HR content that people want to consume, I believe that can only be presented as an asset to the overall business. So if you look here at the standardization of this process, instead of publishing your own ads as a company to run this as a recruitment marketing strategy, this has not only cost benefits, but also various other optimizers. This is growing in an organic context, and I would even argue that the quality of the hires is much better if you manage to engage a certain funnel of candidates into a hiring process. So this is, the type of innovation that I would say is the best innovation I've worked on in the past year or so. How do you make trade-offs between quality and costs? Interesting question. Probably the best example I have here is to talk about how I produce videos. And you see, in the beginning it was straightforward. I would think of something for a number of days or even weeks, and then I would spend all my time producing it. But starting, I believe March of this year, I decided that I would have to do my best to pretty much publish content on a weekly basis, or even more than one video per week. So because of this, there are some various trade-offs that I have to make between quality, between the quality of idea and the quality of production, even also that I'm running on a pretty limited budget, as you might expect with any YouTube channel. So in order to optimize my production process for this, like instead of producing one idea followed by writing a scenario, followed by producing it, I try to serialize, to standardize this process by spending a number of days on coming up with ideas, then a number of days actually scripting those scenarios and rewriting them, and basically ensuring that I have some high quality scenarios. And then I would spend a few days into actually producing those videos. And this has actually played a very significant role in helping me to create content on a more consistent basis. The other thing that's very important here is the production process, the video editing process, and the tools that I use in my day-to-day activities. You see, in the beginning, I used to do this with a mobile phone, which is not the best component of an automated flow. And I would also do my videos using daylight, which is another factor that's not very constant. So instead of doing this, I actually have a lighting set, have a sound set, and have a video set, which are pretty much turnkey, that I could use whenever I want. So using this process, I'm not dependent on any video crew, on any sound engineer, and same goes with the software. I employ the same types of software which I got used to, and this helped me very much to streamline this overall process. Now, in terms of budgeting, it's very important to understand that budgeting is something that I always have to take into account, because as I said in the beginning of the situation, the budget, since this is a pretty small YouTube channel, it's quite challenging at times to self-support it. So I actually had to grow this into a broader business by offering additional services such as coaching. And this seems to be working quite well with YouTube, in the sense that my revenue on YouTube has been growing for 13 months in a row. So I believe that also the quality of my content has increased, and I'm also more consistently posting information these days. So you see, I could also employ a strategy such as I would try to post each and every day like other channels do, but I believe the level of quality would be too low for the type of content that I produce. So long story short, this is how I make trade-offs between quality and delivery schedules. So hopefully this gave you an idea on how a behavioral interviewing process goes, and I tried to add as many tips and tricks as possible throughout the video. And I will emphasize once more that I intentionally use the same examples over and over again to give you an idea on what it means to use the same examples for a consumer perspective. In other words, you should prepare as many examples as you get, high quality ones, in order to make the conversation more engaging and to essentially put together a great show here. So hopefully you found this information useful, and as always, thank you very much for watching.